Hello everyone, and welcome to this DomLabs tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you guys how to create custom editor scripts to enhance your productivity inside of Unity. Right now, you can see that I just have a square inside my scene, which has this square script on it, which has a public float, a size, and it's just one, and then two methods, a generate color and a reset color. Generate color just sets the color to a random color, and reset just sets the color to white. And whenever we start, I'm just going to generate the color. And let's say I wanted to test this. What I would have to do is click play, and you can see that when it does, my square changes color, and if I want to try it again, then I have to click play again, and it loads, and if I had a very big game, this would take forever, and I wouldn't want to do this every single time, and if I had something that only was caused only sometimes, not just on start, this would be very, very much a pain to be able to test. So that's where we can use Unity editor scripts. So let's create a mono behavior script, and I'm going to name this square editor. And before we open up this script, so I'm just going to go back inside of the Unity editor, and once it finishes compiling, I'm going to create a folder inside of here named editor, and then drag the square editor script inside of that. And you must make sure you do this, or else these scripts will be compiled when you build your game, and we don't want that to happen because they're just editor scripts for testing. So now we can open up the square editor, and then in here we're just going to delete these two methods, and then up here we're going to type using Unity editor, and then instead of inheriting from mono behavior, we're going to inherit from editor. Now we have an editor script. But what we're going to have to do is create something that does something whenever we push a button or something like that. So we're going to type a public override void on inspector GUI or GUI. And you can see that I just auto-corrected it, and it typed base.onInspectorGUI. And that's because of this override. That means this is already a method, but what we're doing is we're overriding it, and we're putting new stuff inside of it when we call it. But this base.onInspectorGUI calls the method, and then we can do something. We can do stuff after it, or we can do stuff before it if we want, which is not something we want to do right now, but that's what this does. So now, what I want to do is when I push a button, I want to call this generate color, so that we can generate the color without having to go into the play mode. So after this, we're going to do an if statement. So if GUI layout dot button, and then parentheses, and then a string, and then you're going to put your button name. So I'm going to just type color, and then if this, so if we push the button, then we're going to call this method, but we need a reference to our square first. So we are going to we're going to get a variable to it, and this is very easy to do in editor scripts because they have a target, which is the square editor. So I'm going to get a variable of type square, and it's square, I'm going to set it equal to target. And you can see I'm getting an error right here, and that's because it is an object right now, not a square. So what we're going to do is type parentheses and then square. And this is just making this variable into type square, into this, just right here. And then that means we can use it. So now when we do this, we're going to type square dot generate color. We can also do the same for the reset, so let's just copy this over and type reset for the button name, and then square dot reset color. And now, if we go back inside of Unity, it's actually not going to do anything because if we go to the square, you can just see the size and nothing else, and you would think we should have two buttons. But we don't have anything that says that this should be on the square script. So up at the top, we're going to type custom editor, and then parentheses, type of parentheses square. And the square is the name of the script with this stuff on it. That means that this editor will be on all of the square game objects. So now if we go back inside Unity, what is going to happen is we have these color and reset buttons. And if I click color, you can see, if I go into my game view, that this changes color, this square. You can see it's changing color. If I click reset, it'll change back to white. And you can see that that is pretty cool. And we didn't have to click play at all. So I'm just going to click reset. And then now you see that we have this size right here. So I'm just going to show you one more thing that we can change the size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a GUI layout dot horizontal slider, and then it's going to give us it's going to take a value, a left value, and a right value, which is a minimum and a maximum. The value is going to be our square dot size. The left value, or the minimum, is going to be 0.1f, and then the right value will be something like 3. Now, we're not doing anything with this, so let's just set the square dot size to this. So we are taking the square dot size and we're setting it to this slider, which takes in this value, which seems kind of strange, but that's what we have to do. So now we're going to change the size. So we'll do square dot transform dot local scale is equal just to a vector 3.1 times square dot size. And now what this does is it just sets the scale to whatever our size is. So now we can go back inside of Unity, and then you'll see that we have this pretty cool scroll bar right now. And if I drag it, you can see the square gets bigger and it gets smaller and bigger and smaller, and you can see this size value right here changes with this slider. And you can see that it gets 3 and then 0.1 and every single number in between. But what if I don't want to see that? Then what you can do is just delete this base.onInspector GUI call, and then it won't show any of the variables that are on our regular square editor script. You can see that in our regular square I have a public float size, which means it should show up in the editor, but since we do not have that call, and we have this override, that means instead of calling onInspector GUI normally, we're just going to call this instead. So it's not going to show us any of the variables. So we can just go like this, and you can see that our scale is updating. We can color, reset, we can size it up, do whatever we really want to, and this makes prototyping and debugging your game a whole lot easier, because if there was something, a win action per se, that only happened after you beat the level, and if you wanted to test that, you would have to beat the level every single time. But now we can just do a button, and then we're going to call that, and we don't even have to be inside of play mode to do it. And this is really helpful just in all aspects of Unity. But if you found this helpful, please give our channel a like and a subscribe, because it really helps out a ton. Thank you!